let's talk about the Thunder since they're trending. They did
I was
just lose
hoping you
to
would say
Atlanta
Thunder.
as we're recording this. And we've probably asked this question before, but I'm going to ask it again and then give my own answer to it. Do the Thunder actually need to do anything to be one of the 5 to 6 teams most likely to win the title this season? And I'll preface it before you answer with the vitals. They are top 5 in offense and defense, including in the half court, where they have the best half court offense. And that's been, they're the best 3-point shooting team in the league. They are below average when it comes to volume, but I've kind of focused on, I really think that they're not a good rebounding team. We know this, but they've now beaten, the Timberwolves, the Celtics. We saw them they've been beating. We talked about how they could use some wins against good teams, and then they just they rip-rolled the Lakers.
Yep.
I'm not saying the Lakers are a good team, but ever since I think it was that Lakers game was sort of the turning point for them, that was on November 26th. They've just been rattling off victories against teams that they're 12-4 during that stretch, plus 9.6 rating. Some of the things we have focused on, or at least I have harped on, I won't say they're starting to normalize, but they've improved to where there was this squishiness with the starting 5 offensively. That seems to be coming around a little bit. Josh Giddey has been better. I would say much better as of late because he was working from such a nadir. That starting unit during this stretch in the 13 games they've played together, they're shooting 45% from 3. They've outscored opponents by 31 points in their 158 minutes. That's not including the Atlanta game on Wednesday night. So I want to say, I think that the people who believe they need to trade for a star are mistaken, because right now that works within their salary structure, but long-term with Jalen Williams eventually getting a new deal, Chet Holmgren, Josh Giddey himself, you're very much viewing that as, well, we're making this move because our title window is now. We know title windows are fickle and are short. And so we want to maximize the next 2 to 3 years rather than prioritizing the next 6 to 8. I don't think that's a flawed way of thinking, by the way. I think anyone who's just criticizing, well, a star doesn't fit into their salary structure, why would they go after Larry Markkinen? It's because you don't know what could happen next year, the year after that. So there is the element of the now, but if you're already good enough to win the title, you don't need to worry about that. And so I'm curious to where you land on this team going into the playoffs, winning, I'm going to say 3 playoff series to come out of the West. I'm not even saying they need to win a title, but are they good enough to do that left alone?
So I think the thing that should push them towards going and getting a big name is kind of the same reason I don't want them to, which is that because the reason you do it is oh shit, we are maybe the best team in the West. There's really 1 or 2 other teams, certainly Denver is Denver, but you could make the case that I think net rating says it, that the Thunder have been better than the Wolves. There's at least
their offense is, I would say, more trustworthy than Minnesota's, for sure.
There's a discussion to be had there for sure. So, but it's well, if they're already this good, why don't we just let this group grow together, keep the powder dry, and I don't know, maybe somebody better than Markkinen becomes available, and we'll definitely have the ability to make the best offer for that guy. But at the same time, you're right here. You might be one guy away. I'm always more conservative about stuff like this, where it's I kind of don't want to touch this team. If I want Holmgren and Williams and SGA to just be there as the top 3 guys for, you talk about a 6 to 8 year window. There's no such thing. I think every smart franchise goes in 2 to 3 year windows, and then they just reassess after.
That is the argument for them going to make the trade, though, right? Is that you have these 3 now, and then you can fit it into your salary structure for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah,
let's maximize that.
I just if it were someone, because who's the guy? Because if it's Markkinen, look, we love Markkinen, but maybe there's something better. Why not aim even higher if it means waiting a year, or I don't know. I watched that entire game last night. I'm so in on the Thunder. They're so good.
So here's where I land. I probably wouldn't. I'm not going to say that. I mean, because I love so many of watching the players on, and I'm not even talking about the top end talent. I know some people have tried to frame it as like Lou Dort being expendable, and it's like, I know he's erratic on the offensive end at times, but he still has volume on the offensive end, which is more than you could say for some players. And his defensive workload, it allows you to insulate so many other people, including, you know why Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in part is so good defensively? Because he gets to play with J-Dub and Lou Dort.
Yep.
You know why J-Dub is so good defensensively? Because he gets to play with Lou Dort. And general.
And Chet's a great defensive player right now today as a rookie. Like that.
So but like Isaiah Joe, Kenrich Williams, I don't want to see those guys get traded. I don't want to see their minutes get cut. Poku's not even playing. Usman Jang's not playing. My heart breaks for both those guys. At the same time, there are different levels to it. I wouldn't make, and I would be reticent to do this basically no matter which team I am. I don't want to make the star trade mid-season because it just feels like much harder to integrate someone who's completely foreign to your system and your principles and your ideologies. Mark Daigneault could probably do it because he does look, I don't know if you saw that I tweeted, you probably didn't. I said Mark Daigneault looks like John Stockton discovered science. Like that's just what he reminds me of when I see him. But I think if you are a contender, you should treat yourself like a contender, and you could stand to beef up maybe the 6th, the 7th, the 8th spot in your rotation. Look, there's a very clear need up front when you look at rebounding, maybe just some heft bounce there. But I also think you could make the argument. I know he's been better lately. I'm not trying to be spicy with this. Josh Giddey is not a good fit for this team long term.
Oh, he's the guy you move 100%. And of the young core, that's the guy.
It's not about we need to trade one of these guys before they get paid and turn them into another star. It's no, we should trade him before we have to pay him when his value is high enough. If they want to roll him and do the Sam Presti special into more picks, fine, do that. Now might be the time to do it if he continues to play well. Defenses, and Boston dared him to shoot. They had bigs on him for a good portion of the game. That is going to happen in the playoffs, and I have very little confidence that Josh Giddey is going to deliver for you offensively in the playoffs. And so that, though, is thinking like, well, if we're just going to move him for picks, why not wait until the summer or something? Because he is technically helping our team now. He is important now. But that sort of brings me back to, is there something where you can even make, let's acquire not Larry Markkinen, who becomes their 4th best player, but someone who is like their 5th or 6th best player? You should consider that if it's on the table. I would certainly say like 6th or 7th or 8th. Like that's not going to cost you that's not going to cost you Cason Wallace to go out and get that guy. It's not even going to cost you Josh Giddey if you want the 7th best player in your rotation. I ultimately think what they're going to do is something like, and I was thinking about this while I was at the gym today, is wouldn't it be so, if the Bulls were just so cheap and they wanted to get out of money before next season, and it would be so Sam Presti of, oh, like Lonzo's starting to run? Like we'll turn Davis Bertans into Lonzo and see if Lonzo can be anything for us. And so it's just like, yeah, there's redundancies there with Josh Giddey, but just like someone who is under contract for next season, maybe even, it wouldn't shock me if they were the team that traded for John Collins, just to say, maybe he doesn't play a lot for us, but this is a salary anchor we could use in a trade if we want to, whose salary will be off the books by the time all these other guys are making this money. That's probably the move they make, which I think is fine. But I do have, if I'm distrusting something about them, I look at how they might be susceptible to bigger teams on the glass, or they could be tossed around on the front line if you're playing more of these physical teams. And then there's something about their offense that I just don't trust, where it feels like they could maybe use someone who's going to get up threes in more volume, or just an improvement, a spacing improvement over some of the Josh Giddey or Lou Dort minutes, in the sense of how our defense is going to guard these players, or even, and I think J-Dub is getting better here, but sort of in, not even in every level scorer, but in every level ball handler. And I've said this way too many times over the past few weeks, but like someone who has some half court jiggle and joggle. Them.
I think one of the interesting things, and they definitely did this against the Celtics and have been doing it more. It used to be Williams would kind of run second units, and like it was always tough because, you know, SGA wouldn't be out there. A lot of times Chet wouldn't be out there. And so he's kind of overburdened in that role to begin with, and there just wasn't a lot of support. They're playing Micic a lot more and he's got the ball in second units. And like, I mean, he, you know, he's not going to blow by anybody, but like that's a point guard. And he is really like,
Great
there
point.
have been stretches where he is unlocking stuff that J-Dub just like couldn't, which is like fine. It's like you can't ask him to be, a primary initiator with no support out there and expect success. So like there are still, even with this roster, because Micic just like was not playing, and now I think he really actually matters to second unit. So like that's all to say
there's
that
like zip and vim to what he's doing on and off the ball when you're watching him too. Yeah.
So like that's, I mean, good find. I mean, I really killed that acquisition. Just really like great timing by me, like right before he started to play a lot. It was good suddenly.
I also I killed them for giving up too much to move up 2 spots and get Case and Wallace. And now I'm like, well,
yep. So much for that. I mean, we're just wrong across the board about the Thunder, basically. Like,
that's why you should listen to us.
Yes.
We're never right, but we admit it.
We always admit it. Doesn't part of you just want to not mess with this team at all and just see like what
you can't? I think reasonably you can't, but if you can move players who aren't really playing, like Davis Bertans and then some of these youngsters who are just not like, they don't even have a role moving forward. And if it's a lower end first, to get someone who might play for you, be your 7th guy in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at it. I don't know who that is, but like everyone's assuming it, you talk about it. It doesn't need to be a star was both of our points. And it's like, maybe it's but it's like, because Micic is playing, it's, well, even if Bogdanovic became available, is that someone you add? And like, the answer should be yes, because he's an upgrade over this. But I get the instinct of, we don't want to mess with this team right now. But that brings me back to my overarching question of, even if we don't want to mess with this team, can you envision them winning a title as currently constructive? And if that's the point of this entire fucking thing, the answer matters. And it matters because of what we just talked about with title windows. It's great to say, well, no, they'll grow together. You can't guarantee that. And the other thing I'll say, we've talked enough about Chet in general on this podcast. He is, I don't think it's being said enough that he's like the second best player on what might be the best team in the regular season team in the NBA. Yeah. But when's the last time a rookie missed someone missed their entire first season due to injury and just never had any injury concerns for the rest of their career?
I mean, why would you speak that evil into?
Well, I'm just trying to spotlight the point of, I mean, even Blake Griffin kind of had her checkered health bill, like probably earlier than you would have expected after missing his
Simmons and Embiid.
Well, I'm trying to find the exception. Was Blake Griffin the closest thing to a recent exception?
Oh, because he was fairly healthy until he really wasn't with the knee stuff. Yeah, probably. That's we should research that. But yeah, no, point taken. It's rare.
And so that is, wrap it up there. Right now, how many teams would you pick in front of them to win the title this year without the Thunder making any changes?
I mean, it's the usual suspects. It's like Boston, Denver, and then you got to start like Minnesota is like maybe, and then who am I forgetting? Like Milwaukee's a maybe, although they can't beat the Pacers, so I don't know how they're supposed to win a title. Yeah, they're right. So all the way back to the original question, like the reason I would say the Thunder won't win the title this year is like they're just too young, and this just never happens. Like, it's just you always got to go get beat by the Denvers of the world in the conference finals, or maybe before that, before you really break through. So like that's a stupid argument because there's nothing like that actually addresses like the team itself. It's just like, well, based on historic trends, like you just don't do it this young. Like it's just not what happens. So like, I don't know which way that cuts as far as like, should they go get guys, get veterans or something, or just leave it alone and trust that in 2 years we won't be able to say they're too young because they've scaled up through several playoff rounds.
This is our roundabout way of definitively hedging, where it's saying, don't say the Thunder need to trade for a star, but don't just assume that they have all the pieces in place and that this thing is built to last or built to get over the top. It just doesn't typically work like that.